Hi guys, it's me, ChazRHD, and welcome this morning in the UK at least to the race preview for today's 2021 Styrian Grand Prix from, of course, the Red Bull Ring. And I think we are in, definitely, for a very exciting Grand Prix, whether it's dry, whether it's wet, doesn't really matter. If you look at the starting grid on the left-hand side of the screen, it is a very exciting starting grid, and I cannot wait for the race later on. And in this stream, what we're going to be doing is going through the teams, also going through some data and previewing how I think the race will probably go. And I'd say at the moment, I'm probably going to preview how I think the race is going to go in the dry. I will mention, if it is wet, what, could change, for example, in terms of, certain drivers being a bit better than normal, or maybe certain cars being a bit better than normal. I'll get into that as well, but I'm going to mostly preview this race for the dry. I don't know, to be honest, at the moment, if it is going to be a wet race or a dry race, because I haven't seen any, say, pre-race action at the circuit yet. I think there's a Porsche Super Cup race in about 25 minutes from now, so we'll see then, I guess, if there's any rain around. But, yeah, we'll try and preview the race in the dry. But as well, just want to say, hopefully you guys are doing well no matter what time it is in your part of the world. And hopefully you're having as best a day as you can possibly be having. And also, please do bear with me. I know my voice sounds a bit deeper. I have just woken up like 45 minutes ago. And I have, a slight cold because I've woken up a bit earlier than I'm used to. Most days, so do bear with me. I mean, of course, for the race watch along later, it will be absolutely fine and in fine fettle, if you will. So yeah, just bear with me for this stream. But if you want to know, and you missed the qualifying session yesterday, and you want to know the results of qualifying, let's get into that now. So Max Verstappen will be starting the 2021 Styrian Grand Prix on pole position. It's Red Bull's first ever pole position at the Red Bull Ring. So great job there by Max Verstappen with another great lap, a quarter of a second clear of Lewis Hamilton, who of course will be starting on the front row alongside him. Valtteri Bottas did qualify second, but because of that three-place penalty for the dangerous driving incident on Friday, he will start the race in P5, which is on the left-hand side. I have him down in P5, so it will be Hamilton starting second, Lando Norris third. Brilliant lap from Lando yesterday, replicating the brilliance of the Red Bull Ring that he did, a year ago. And then it will be Perez starting in fourth, and then, of course, Valtteri Bottas starting in P5. Then it'll be Pierre Gasly in sixth. Good job by the AlphaTauri driver. Charles Leclerc seventh in what is probably the best position Ferrari could have got in qualifying, to be honest. And we'll get into that later on in terms of the sector time data. Because Ferrari, I think, are, if it is dry today, in big trouble, honestly. Eighth in qualifying was Yuki Tsunoda, but he also picked up a three-place grid penalty for blocking partially Valtteri Bottas on Valtteri Bottas's, I think, first run in qualifying 3. And it was a slam dunk penalty. He just was so stupid with what he did, just hovering on the racing line on the entry to the braking point of turn 4. Again, it was very, very stupid of him. So he will start the race in P11, meaning that Fernando Alonso will start 8th, which is very good for him. Lance Stroll 9th. George Russell will start inside the top 10, which I think has got to be the first time he started inside the top 10 in a Williams. It has to be. And luckily for Russell, he can start on whatever tyre he wants to. So watch out for Russell, because you never know. You really never know. He could end up getting, finally, that result of a points finish. So Yuki Tsunoda will be starting in P11. Of course, on his worn soft tyres. And then after that, you have Carlos Sainz in P12. Daniel Ricciardo will be starting 10 positions behind his teammate in 13th. Sebastian Vettel 14th, Giovinazzi 15th, Latifi 16th, Ocon 17th, Raikkonen 18th, and then Schumacher 19th, and Mazepin in 20th. By the way, when it comes to Ricciardo and Vettel, I think during the watch-along yesterday, the quali watch-along, I think I had Vettel ahead of Ricciardo, and I think what happened was possibly Sebastian Vettel had his lap time deleted, and that's why he suddenly dropped back, because I remember watching the session at the time, and it appeared Ricciardo finished in 14th, not 13th, but I think Vettel had his time deleted, of course, for a track limit violation at one of the final two corners on the circuit. There you go. Those are the results of qualifying. And again, I'll read out the grid, the full grid for the race. Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris, Perez, Bottas, Gasly, Leclerc, Alonso, Stroll, Russell. That's your top 10. And the rest, Tsunoda, Sainz, Ricciardo, Vettel, Giovinazzi, Latifi, Ocon, Raikkonen, Schumacher, and Mazepin. But now let's get into the top two teams and preview the battle for victory today. Now, yesterday, Mercedes, again, which is a bit of a worry for them, they didn't really have any real issues in qualifying. Their car, well, looked not, I'd say great, but it looked very good, and it didn't really look like there was anything wrong with it. And I think they did, honestly, as a team, the best they could, you know, in qualifying second and third. But again, just like in France, Max Verstappen in that Red Bull was just that little bit better. And of course, Mercedes, I think, would have been disappointed with the gap between them and Verstappen. I think they would have been hoping it would have been, say, a tenth to a tenth and a half closer, maybe. I think quarter of a second around the Red Bull ring is a lot of time to be losing because, again, it's such a small lap that a quarter of a second really is over what, a minute and 3 seconds or a minute and 4 seconds lap. That really is a lot of time to be losing in, you know, in a part of the grid where it's supposed to be very close. So I think Mercedes will be a bit disappointed at the gap there, but even though I do think Max Verstappen is the clear favourite to win the race, and Red Bull are as well because of the form that they're in, and also the circuit we're racing at. I think Verstappen, you know, it's going to take a lot for him to be beaten, honestly, in this Grand Prix. But don't count out Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, because we've still seen, you know, last weekend in France, and we've seen plenty of times this season, that even when Max Verstappen has been quicker or very quick in qualifying, that Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes have still had a faster race car. For example, in France, up until Verstappen did his second pit stop, I would say Mercedes had the quicker race car than Red Bull. Hamilton, you know, when he got into the lead after Verstappen's mistake on lap 1, by the time they got to the pit stops, he pulled like a 3.5, 4 second lead over Max. And then, you know, even though Max jumped him at the pit stop, the first pit stop, Lewis was still right on his tail until the second pit stop. And even in that second stint, Verstappen, you know, almost ran out of time to beat Lewis Hamilton in that Grand Prix. So don't count out Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, and I'm definitely not going to count him out either, because, again, they have the race pace, without doubt. They got probably the best race pace on the grid. They've got a driver who I'm not sure I would say at the moment is performing the best in the races as a pure driver, but as a driver-car combination, you'd have to say Hamilton in the Mercedes is probably the quickest, but I would say that's more so, or not much more so, but say slightly more so because of the car being so good in the race, and also being a bit kinder on its tyres than the Red Bull is. The Red Bull, I think towards the end of a stint, tends to wear out its tyres a bit more than the Mercedes does. So, don't count him out. And he could absolutely win the Grand Prix. If Hamilton, for example, was to get into the lead of the race on the first lap, yeah, Verstappen, he's got the power. He's got still lots of speed. The Red Bull is still very quick. But it's going to be pretty tough if that does happen for Verstappen then to get back past. Of course, in France he did, but it took great work by the team, and also fantastic work for himself. So he's going to have to be his absolute best again, Max Verstappen, I think, to beat Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, because I still expect, even if Verstappen does win the race today, I still think Hamilton and Mercedes are going to be very close to whoever the race winner is if they don't win the race. So they could definitely win the Grand Prix. For Valtteri Bottas, his aim is probably going to have to be third. Not sure he'll get it, though, because I think Sergio Perez, as long as he can keep ahead of Bottas at the start, I think Perez absolutely has the speed to beat Valtteri in the Grand Prix. So not sure he will do it, but his aim definitely has got to be third. Ideally for Mercedes, if he could pass both Perez and Norris on that first lap, then that puts himself, of course, right in play with the top two. So that would be great for the team if he could do that, but most likely he's not going to. So, yeah, Bottas gets a podium, then that should be good enough from his side. But Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, as long as they're at their best and they don't make any mistakes, which I think in France, maybe they didn't have quite a quick enough car to win, say, compared to Red Bull. But in the race last week, I still think they performed very, very strongly. And if they do so again, and if Verstappen and Red Bull get anything wrong in the Grand Prix, sorry, then no doubt Hamilton in a very strong position then to pounce in this Grand Prix. But with Red Bull, let's get on to them now. Max Verstappen, like I said, he is the favourite to win the Grand Prix today. He is probably the best driver, one of the best drivers for this circuit. Probably the only other person I can think of that is a better driver around the Red Bull ring. Did qualify second, but now starts in fifth. So that's one problem out of the way. So, out of that, say, front row, I say definitely Max Verstappen better around this track than Lewis Hamilton. His car's performing very well. The Red Bull team and car is, or just has been better in the last 3 or 4 races than the Mercedes has. And Verstappen, it just seems everything is going his way. Of course, it could easily go wrong at any moment. I mean, if today Verstappen was to have a reliability issue or make a big mistake that caused him to fall down the field, then Lewis Hamilton then could easily retake the lead of the championship. But at the moment, it does seem that Max Verstappen is in not a dominant position, but a bit of an ominous position at the moment, because he just, at the moment, despite that pressure of being in his first world title fight and going up against what I believe to be the greatest driver of all time, he just keeps banging in great laps, puts in great races, great race after great race, quite frankly. I mean, if you look at the race performances of Max Verstappen this season, except for, say, illegally overtaking Hamilton in Bahrain and that slight mistake in Portugal which led to Hamilton overtaking him, except for that, Max Verstappen has been almost perfect. Probably as close to perfect as you can get, honestly. So it's just very hard to see in this Grand Prix how Max Verstappen really, I mean, again, Hamilton and Mercedes can definitely win. They've got good race pace, might even at times have better race pace today than Red Bull. But because Max Verstappen is so hard to overtake, as we have seen, the only way you can overtake him is if you do what Hamilton did in Spain, for example, and go for that fresher tyre towards the end of the Grand Prix to make sure you have that much more speed to pass a driver like Verstappen. But if you don't have that, then passing Verstappen is incredibly hard, because he makes it that hard for you to even get close to overtaking him. So again, even though I think Hamilton and Mercedes will have good race pace, unless Verstappen and Red Bull make a mistake, I'm not sure really how they're going to use that to the point where they actually win the race, unless Verstappen has a proper problem in this Grand Prix. And I kind of feel as though, to be honest, that looking back at France with Verstappen making a mistake on the first corner, you kind of feel as though from that race that because Verstappen made that mistake, that Mercedes really should have capitalised and made him pay and won the Grand Prix. Even if Verstappen had, you know, say finished in second with Hamilton winning, Hamilton, yeah, wouldn't have gained that many points on Max Verstappen, but at least they would have punished him. But they still failed to capitalise, did Mercedes, on that mistake from Red Bull. Or not from Red Bull, but from Max Verstappen. And you kind of feel as though with Verstappen that, you know, you're not going to see too many of those mistakes, say, at the moment, given the circumstances of this season. So, you know, if they can't Mercedes quite capitalise on that, then if Verstappen just keeps it all cool and calm today, don't really see how Verstappen loses this. It'll be very close, though, between him and Hamilton, but I just think, given how he's driving at the moment, I just think he has enough with that car to win the Grand Prix. You know, the Red Bull has enough power to keep itself definitely ahead of a Mercedes and to keep itself out of serious threat. If again, from a Mercedes, if that Mercedes, of course, has DRS. The only thing I can think of that might be a slight issue today is if Red Bull, like I said earlier, they do tend to wear out their tyres a bit more than Mercedes do, especially towards the end of a stint. That's the only thing I think could be a bit of an issue today is, and if it's a dry race, I do expect it to be a one-stop race because I don't see why anyone would really go for a two-stopper here. I just think, you know, if they can't, say, Mercedes capitalise on that, I just don't see how Verstappen doesn't, you know, win today, because I don't think Verstappen is going to repeat what he did in France and make a mistake on the first lap. At least Red Bull are hoping that he doesn't, but like I said, the only way I see him losing is if Red Bull don't get the pit stop right, in terms of not maybe the pit stop itself, but in terms of when he pits. And, you know, if Mercedes get the strategy really right and bang on, then maybe then Hamilton and Mercedes can come back at Verstappen. But other than that, I don't really see, unless Verstappen has a poor start to the Grand Prix, I don't see how Max Verstappen today loses it, you know, on the track. The only way I can see, like I said, is in the pits. So, Max Verstappen, in my view, is the favourite to win today. For Sergio Perez, his aim has got to be third. Hopefully, for Perez, because of the strategy he's on, he does need to get ahead of Lando Norris, and hopefully he does on that first lap, because then he'll very much come into play with the top two as well, because Verstappen and Hamilton are starting the race on medium compound tyres. Perez is on the soft, and Bottas is on the medium as well. So, Sergio Perez, kind of in a similar way to, like, back in the day when we had the refueling era, where if a driver was put on, say, 5 to 10 laps less fuel, or maybe not 5 laps less, let's say 10 laps less fuel, to try and be a bit more racy and help out his teammate at the front there, and to try and, you know, be used as a strategic nuisance, I guess you could say, for the benefit of his teammate. That's basically what Perez is going to be today, and that's what Red Bull are going to try and do with him. What they're going to try and do, and they're going to hope they can do, is that he can pass Lando Norris on the first lap, which I'm not sure if he can. We'll have to see about that. But if he does pass Lando Norris on the first lap, then what Red Bull will be wanting is him to then pass Lewis Hamilton, or at least harry him and put him under pressure. Because, like I said, the point of starting him on the soft compared to Verstappen on the medium is to make a nuisance of himself compared to Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas, and to upset Hamilton and Bottas in that first, say, 15 to 20 laps in the Grand Prix. I do think after, say, 20 laps, I think Perez's tyres will really start to drop off then. And I think, say, lap 25 is probably when he'll pit. And hopefully for Perez by that point, if he is ahead of Norris and, say, in third position, you would hope he would have built a good enough gap to the rest of the midfield by that point to come out from his first pit stop into clear enough air to then play a factor still later in the race against Bottas and Hamilton. But yeah, what I see Perez's race being, again, is passing Norris, harrying Hamilton. If he can pass Hamilton, and for Red Bull's point of view, that is great. But then again, he will pit earlier because he's on the soft. He'll probably pit around lap 25. And then he should go from the soft to the hard compound. I don't think he'll go onto the medium because I don't think the medium will do 45 laps. And I think the hard compound tyre, without doubt, is going to be the tyre to use later on in the Grand Prix as the final tyre, say, for most of the drivers. Yeah, I think he'll pit, say, lap 25, go onto the hard compound tyre, and then, if he's not too far behind Hamilton, let's say 2 or 3 seconds, and Hamilton is, on the medium still and hasn't pitted, then he might be able to do then an undercut on Lewis Hamilton. And if he then gets ahead of Hamilton with that undercut, then he then can, hold up Lewis Hamilton, and that gifts the race win to Max Verstappen. So I think that really is Red Bull's strategy today. And if it does play out how they're hoping, then Max Verstappen, as long as he doesn't make a mistake, he will win the race, even if Hamilton and Mercedes have good race pace. If Perez can get in there and interrupt Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes' program, then I think he will disrupt the Mercedes team enough to then, allow his teammate to win the Grand Prix. And I definitely think, by the way, that Sergio Perez will be on the podium. But yeah, I'd say for the first pit stops, and I think, again, we will only have probably one pit stop today. I think Hamilton and Verstappen are probably going to pit around lap 30, maybe 35 at the absolute latest, but I think it'll probably be lap 30. And then, yeah, Perez and, say, the soft tyre runners between lap 20 and 25 is when I think they'll come in for their first and only pit stop. And I think everyone will go from whatever tyre they start on to the hard. I mean, for the people outside the top 10, if they want to start on the hard compound tyre, then, that does mix things up. By the way, the Porsche Super Cup race is about to start, and I can tell you it is sunny and looking pretty nice. So it looks as though we are in for a dry Grand Prix. Of course, the race is not for another, 2.5 hours yet, but just letting you guys know that. But yeah, I think in terms of strategy today, yeah, the soft tyre runners who are starting on that compound, they'll pit between lap 20 and 25. Medium tyre runners, they'll pit, so the ones who qualified in Q2 on them, and say Verstappen, Hamilton, Bottas, I think they will pit around lap 30-ish, and they should have by then built enough of a gap to the midfield to come out ahead of those drivers and cars. But for the people outside the top 10, I'd say the medium tyre runners are probably going to, say, if Carlos Sainz, for example, in the Ferrari, if he starts on the medium outside the top 10 in P12, he will probably go to, say, lap 35, maybe lap 40 at most. But if anyone outside the top 10 starts outside, not starts outside, but, starts on the hard compound tyre, then I could see them definitely going at least 40 laps, maybe 45 laps at most, into the race, and then putting on, say, the soft compound tyre to try and make their way back through. And I could definitely see Sebastian Vettel doing that, who is, of course, starting in 14th place. And honestly, I'd say it's the best thing to do, because the hard compound is not losing that much time to the soft or medium in race trim, at least this weekend. But let's get on to the first two midfield teams. Ferrari first, P7 and P12. Nowhere near really as good as I thought it would be. I thought they would have the single lap speed to be kind of similar to what they were in Baku. Maybe not getting pole position, but to get, say, one car into the top 3 or 4, and then another car, say, between 5th and 10th. But they just simply, as I'll show in a moment with the sector time data, they simply do not still have the power to compete at a circuit like this. And to be honest, when I look at their car and how things are going at the moment, and now the fact that Ferrari come out and said last weekend that they have stopped development on this year's car fully, and they are now fully concentrating on next year's car, which is understandable. I think Ferrari are going to just drop back this season now because, you know, if they continue developing the car that they had had from, say, or had around, say, Spain and Monaco, I don't think Ferrari would be as bad now as, say, they've turned out to be. Their race pace especially has really fallen off a cliff. But again, this qualifying session just wasn't that great, and I don't really see Ferrari magically being better at any real other races this season. Maybe at a certain track that really suits their car or really suits one of their drivers, maybe then they can get into a good position then. But really, I think when it comes to them being up in those top 3 or 4 positions, which they were in the first 4 or 5 races, I think those days are over. Say 95% of the time, I'd say that's really over from now on to the end of the season. And I think today, I mean, of course, Charles Leclerc stung on the soft compound tyre. He will struggle for tyre wear compared to, say, Norris, Gasly, Alonso, Stroll. He will struggle on tyres compared to those quite a bit. And then will probably be forced into pitting a bit earlier than the runners outside of the top 10, who will be going probably, say, 15 to 20 laps longer into the race. And then he will fall victim later on to those cars. And there's also, like I've been saying, their straight line speed is still nowhere near good enough for what it needs to be successful around this type of circuit. It just isn't good enough. Carlos Sainz, the only hope I see for him is that the medium compound tyre that he probably will start on really is, just that much better than the soft compound, and then maybe Sainz can then get a few points. But I'll be honest with Ferrari, I'm not sure they will score points today. After France and how poor that was, and, they started that race in a better position, 5th and 7th, and they looked better for that Grand Prix, considering the layout of the circuit, than they do for this. And look what happened. They finished, 11th and 16th, I believe. And I think, again, the depressing thing for Ferrari in this race is because of that, they can't look after their tyres and their straight line speed is so poor that anyone who gets DRS on them is almost certainly going to overtake them. I don't think at all anybody out there can guarantee a points finish for Ferrari. And I'm going to say it now, looking at the cars, say between Leclerc and Sainz and also behind Sainz, I don't believe Ferrari will score points today. I think Alonso will probably be quicker because the Alpine's race pace does tend to be better than the Ferrari race pace. Not much better, but a tad better. Obviously, Stroll will be much quicker than Leclerc, and the Aston Martin in a straight line is so much quicker than the Ferrari. We'll see about Russell. Yuki Tsunoda P11. Maybe Yuki Tsunoda, maybe tyre wear gets to him as well, but he should be much quicker than the Ferraris today. And again, if he gets within a second of a Ferrari, he will be overtaking them, no doubt about it. Obviously, Daniel Ricciardo, he'll come through the field and he'll probably overtake one of the Ferraris in the race at least. And then you've got Sebastian Vettel, of course, who's starting 14th, will probably come through and do well as well. So, like I said, with the cars behind Leclerc and also Sainz and around the 2 Ferraris, I just don't see how they score points today. I don't see it. The only way I can see is if we get a few retirements and, say, a safety car or a couple safety cars that benefit Ferrari massively in terms of track position. That's the only way I can see them scoring points today. I just don't see how, with the car they have, how they can realistically hope to finish in the points. which is a shame, but that's the car they have for this season. It's a better car than last year, but really, if you look at actually in terms of where they started the Grand Prix, I think this time last year, not that much better, to be honest. So, yeah, I think they are going to struggle today, without doubt. And if you're a Ferrari fan, I wouldn't pay attention that much to the TV, honestly, because, again, I think it's going to be a very, very poor day at the office. For McLaren, Lando Norris starting in third. I don't think Norris will finish on the podium unless a bit of chaos happens like it did last year at the Austrian Grand Prix. So, like I said, I don't think Lando Norris will be doing it yet again. It would be great if he could, but as long as he can stay ahead of Perez and Bottas, say on the first lap, and then, eventually they will overtake him because they are quicker, then he should be able to have a good enough gap then to, say, Pierre Gasly to finish in, say, 5th place, should Lando Norris. So that's really got to be his aim in this race, is to finish in the top 5. It would be a shame, given his qualifying pace and the brilliant grid position he does have, if he was to finish lower down than 5th, but I think most likely, considering how quick the McLaren tends to be over the course of a race and how quick it is down the straights, I really don't see how Lando Norris is going to fall that far down the field. Again, he'll lose position, surely, to Perez and Valtteri Bottas, but I don't see how he'll lose position, really, to Pierre Gasly or anybody else. So, I think he'll be fine. It should be 10 points at least heading his way. For Daniel Ricciardo, I think Ricciardo will score points today, but I don't think he'll be that many. Say 2 points for 9th, or maybe at the absolute most 4 points for 8th, but I don't think he'll be anywhere near as good as, of course, the race in France where he picked up 8 points for 6th. I don't think it will be as good as that, but I think he will score points because, as I'll show in a moment, the McLaren car down the straights is very, very quick, and I think it'll be a massive surprise, honestly, if he wasn't able to make his way through the field. But I'm going to quickly look at the sector time data, and then we will get into of course, the rest of the teams. Also, just remembered I've forgotten to put the speed trap data in my OBS slide, so I will try and find that in a moment. But make sure to keep your comments coming, guys, in the live chat, and let me know what you think, of course, for the race and what you think is going to happen for those top 4 teams. But now, let me go on to the sector time data for qualifying yesterday in Austria, and it does help us in terms of us forming an opinion as to what's going to happen today. So, in the first 2 sectors, the 2, I would say, power-dominant sectors, Max Verstappen is clearly quicker. If you compare Verstappen to Hamilton, for example, he is about 1/10 of a second quicker in the first sector. And then in the second sector, he is about 1/10.5 quicker. So, in the power-dominant sectors, overall, Verstappen is, 1/4 of a second quicker than Lewis Hamilton in those parts of the circuit. And that is where Lewis Hamilton is losing the time to Verstappen. It's not through the corners, it's on the straights. And through the, say, if it's a corner, maybe a corner that's mostly flat out and very quick. That's where he is losing the time. Because as you can see, in the final sector, with those 2 fast corners, so, I think I'll retract what I just said there in terms of maybe he's losing a bit of time in the second or first sector to the fast corners, because, of course, the final sector is, 2 fast corners, or 3 fast corners, rather. But yeah, Sector 1 and Sector 2, I think definitely the reason Verstappen is gaining overall 1/4 of a second in those 2 sectors is because, again, the Honda power unit is stronger than the Mercedes power unit right now. You can see that also with Pierre Gasly doing so well in the sector time data as well. But in Sector 3, you can see Lewis Hamilton was, 8 thousandths of a second quicker. So when we get into the sections of the circuit where it's a bit more aerodynamically reliant, the Mercedes is, around this track this weekend, at least level pegging with Red Bull, if not a tad bit quicker. But again, in the first two sectors, where it is really about power, Max Verstappen and Red Bull have a clear advantage there. And I think if Max Verstappen can break that 1 second DRS window before lap 3, then I don't see how Lewis Hamilton, unless Max Verstappen's tyres really go off, I just don't see how Hamilton can get back within his DRS window, because Verstappen, again, will have the power down the straights to just continue edging away from Lewis Hamilton. So that is really where Mercedes this weekend have been missing out compared to Verstappen and Red Bull, which is what we expected. We knew coming into this Grand Prix that the Honda-powered cars would do well, and you can see that so far this weekend. Also, Lando Norris in the first sector, he was a tenth of a second quicker than Lewis Hamilton. A very good first sector for him. And you can also see in that first sector, which I would say, to look at who has, say, the most power, or the most slipperiest of slippery cars in a straight line, you've got to look at Sector 1, really, for the best indication for that. I mean, of course, we'll get up the speed trap data in a moment, but you can see you got Honda power in first, then Mercedes power in second with the McLaren, then a Honda-powered car third, another Mercedes-powered car in fourth, and then Perez, Bottas, Hamilton, of course, Honda, Mercedes, Mercedes. Surprisingly, I have to say, you've got Alonso up there in eighth, which is, again, very surprisingly also surprising that he was 0.2 of a second quicker than Ocon yesterday in qualifying in that sector alone, when it is really just two straights and a corner. So, again, very surprising Alonso was so quick in that sector. But if you look at Sector 1, again, Honda power tends to be, I would say, the strongest in the power-dominant sections. And then just after, very close still, but just after is the Mercedes-powered teams. And also, the reason I was talking about, McLaren being able to hold on to position and possibly make up position because of their great straight line speed, you can see in Sector 1 and also a bit in Sector 2 as well why I say that, because they are just so quick in those sectors where power is very important. Again, in Sector 1, second and fourth, and again, Lando Norris a tenth of a second quicker than Perez, Bottas, or even Lewis Hamilton. So very, very strong those McLarens are in a straight line. But when it comes to, say, Ferrari, and, when I was talking about them in terms of, they're going to really struggle to hold on to position today, just look at Sector 1. 15th and 17th, they are in Sector 1. And again, Sector 1 is the pit straight, a medium speed turn 1, and then another DRS straight. That's all Sector 1 is. And they are, with Charles Leclerc, 0.3 of a second off Verstappen in just Sector 1 alone. That is a lot of time to be losing in, again, two straights and a corner. It just shows you that when it comes to pure power, Ferrari are still lacking a lot compared to McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, Aston Martin, Williams, of course. You could even argue Alpine as well with the Renault power unit there. So, yeah, Ferrari really, really slow in the power sectors. And I know Charles Leclerc improves in Sector 2 there to, I think, 6th place. But still, compared to Verstappen, a tenth and a half down. And in Sector 2, it is, turn 3, heavy braking zone, then a straight, then another heavy braking zone, and then a short straight, and then a fast left-hander. Not too complicated, not that, nothing really that much more difficult, I would say, from Sector 1. and still a tenth and a half down in that sector as well. So Ferrari, like I said, they're really going to struggle to keep cars behind them. You can see in the third sector, though, as well, something that Nib, who of course will be on the stream later, has pointed out to me before, which is so true, that the Ferrari car excels so well in the slower corners, or the, proper slow corners. You can see that really well from the Sector 3 data, because in Sector 3, where it's most, say, aerodynamically reliant around this circuit, you'd expect Ferrari to be a bit quicker, but because it's two fast corners, they're still pretty slow compared to the very top. They're, 0.2 of a second off. They're actually slower in Sector 3 than they are in Sector 2 with their best car compared to the fastest. Again, this is what I say with Ferrari, that with them no longer developing their car for the rest of the season, I just don't see how Ferrari are not going to fall into a position where they get back to pretty much how they were last year, where they're just, maybe in qualifying, they'll get a good grid position, but in the race, they'll just fall back eternally, have really poor tyre wear, and then just end up with a finishing position which is simply not good enough. And honestly, with Ferrari, I would say, even though, yes, they are fourth in the Constructors, and they are, 50-odd points ahead of AlphaTauri and Aston Martin, I don't think Ferrari are all clear in terms of finishing ahead of those. I don't think they are, because again, they're not going to develop their car anymore, Ferrari. And if you look at all the tracks coming up on the calendar, there's not many which are going to suit that car. There's not many. I mean, look at circuits. Again, you need to look at circuits with, say, less straights, but also slow corners. Of course, we race here in a week's time. Silverstone is probably the quickest racetrack, except for Monza, on the calendar. Incredibly quick. I mean, from the exit of Luffield until the final chicane, you're basically flat out. So Ferrari, I think, will struggle there. Definitely in the race on their tyres. Hungary, I think they'll do better then. They probably will get a points finish there, because there are a couple slow corners there where they really could benefit in that particular Grand Prix meeting. But there are still plenty of fast corners, so won't be as, say, a good a track as I think people think. And then, of course, we have Spa and Monza, two power-dominant circuits where I think they'll struggle. Zandvoort, I think they'll struggle. Maybe not as much as they would do around this type of circuit, but I don't think it'll be that much better. Of course, Singapore's no longer on the calendar, which is a big shame for them, because if it was, I think Ferrari probably would have been in contention for pole position there. Been replaced by Turkey, which is still good, because I think Ferrari around there could probably be quite strong. Suzuka, they'll be very slow if that race does go ahead, because it's very quick. Same with Kota, very quick track. There are slow corners, but it's mostly very quick. Mexico, I think they could do well. If we do race to Sao Paulo, no chance. Melbourne, no chance. Saudi, we'll have to see. I don't really know much about the track. And Abu Dhabi, yeah, they probably will be top 10 runners there. But again, because they're not going to develop their car anymore, Ferrari, and I think there's probably a couple other midfield teams in that pack who will probably continue developing a tad more, say, for the rest of the season. Again, they are not all clear for fourth in the Constructors this season. There is an absolutely very good chance that AlphaTauri or Aston Martin could catch them in the Constructors and relegate Ferrari back down to fifth or even sixth in the Constructors. So don't think it's over, because I don't think Ferrari are in a position anymore like they were a few races ago where they're looking as though they're all clear for the top four in the Constructors' Championship. But I just want to, before we move on to the rest of the teams, I just want to get up the speed traps and that data for you guys. Let me just get that up, because I did have it. Let me try and find it. I think this is it. And I'll just adjust it quickly so you guys can see it properly. And Right, there you go. So you can see here the speed trap data. I think the speed trap on the far left-hand side, I think that speed trap is at the very end of the straight between turn 3 and turn 4. I believe it is. And you can see the two McLarens are very quick, first and second. Giovinazzi also very quick in that sector. So I'm going to guess Alfa Romeo have took some wing off to try and help their straight line speed a bit. Also, the Williams is looking good. The Red Bull looking good as well. Of course, Honda powered. And you can see, again, the difference between the Honda powered Red Bull and the, of course, Mercedes powered Works team. There's about a kilometre or a kilometre and a half difference between the Red Bulls and the Mercedes in a straight line at the moment, which is not massive. It can definitely be clawed back if they want to, but it's enough around a track like this to be enough for Red Bull to get pole position. But also, when I was talking about Ferrari, look at them in the speed trap. 19th and 20th, and 8 kilometers an hour down on McLaren. As Martin Brundle would say, doesn't seem a lot, but if something ran into you at 8 kilometers an hour, you'd certainly know about it, and it's so true. That is a lot of kilometers an hour to be giving away to a direct rival. So that's why I say, in this race, there is no way I see them finishing, say, 7th, and maybe Sainz gets them the points. I don't see it at all. Their drivers would have to drive at an all-time great level for that to even be possible today. Again, if Daniel Ricciardo gets anywhere near them, again, he already has an 8 kilometer an hour advantage over the Ferraris in the speed trap. Plus DRS, I mean, come on. Is it even a fair fight? Then you've got behind, Stroll. Lance Stroll has a, 7 kilometer advantage over the Ferraris there. So again, not really going to be a fight. Alonso, where is he? He has about a 6 kilometer advantage. So you can see what I mean. Ferrari, unless they have this unbelievable speed that we never saw coming, I just don't see how they're going to finish in the points, realistically. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I really don't see it. After last Grand Prix, where you would have thought they would have had a better chance to finish in the points last weekend, around a circuit where there's less straights and more so, say, slower corners that do suit their car. Again, you would think that Ferrari would be finishing in the points there, but they weren't. So I think Ferrari will struggle today. And again, look at the finish line as well. Leclerc down in 17th and Sainz again 20th. Carlos Sainz was 10 kilometers an hour slower over the finish line than basically the two Williamses. Again, very, very worrying. And Leclerc, compared to the two Williamses, 8 kilometers an hour slower. So, like I said, if you're a Ferrari fan, I would worry a lot today. I really, really would, because I think this could be one of those races that, say, similar to last season, where, despite, say, a good qualifying, you're already, say, giving up on them a few laps into the race once you start to see cars overtaking them, because you just know at that point what's going to happen. And I think that's what you're going to see today, unfortunately, because of course I do want to see Ferrari up there fighting with Red Bull, Mercedes, but it's not realistically possible, and definitely not in the race with the horrible straight line speed they have. Gotta say though, if they do get their straight line speed fixed for next season, of course it's a massively different era next season, but if they do have, say, aerodynamically one of the strongest, maybe the strongest car on the grid, like they kind of do this season, they just fix that power unit, then they are definitely back in contention for the World Championship. It's just that power unit letting them down so much. Again, 8 kilometers an hour difference between the McLaren and the Ferrari. That is massive. And it means, sadly, that they're just not going to be able to compete today with them in the race. But anyway, we'll whiz through the rest of the teams and then we'll come to the end of this stream. For Aston Martin, I think Lance Stroll definitely finishes in the points. And I think Stroll, honestly, I could see finishing in the top 7. Maybe the top 6 if anything happens to the top 6 there. But I think definitely Lance Stroll finishes in the points. And I'm also going to go for Sebastian Vettel in the points. Don't think it will be ahead of Stroll. I think he'll probably be 9th or 10th. I don't think he can get any better than that. The only way he could is if he, has a good start and gets 2 or 3 positions off the first lap. That would be very good for him, and that would really set him up well for the race. But if he doesn't do that, then I don't really see him finishing any higher than 9th. But I do think that both Aston Martins will finish in the points because their race pace is very, very strong. So look out for the Aston Martins because they will be very good. For AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly starting in 6th. He should finish at least in 6th place. Maybe it could be 5th if Lando Norris and his pace in the race is not too great. But like I've said, the McLarens in a straight line are probably the quickest team this weekend. And the McLaren race pace compared to the rest of the midfield teams is probably the best as well. So I don't really think that is possible. But again, 6th place for him I think absolutely is possible. And for Yuki Tsunoda, I think he will be close to getting into the points, but I think ultimately he just won't get it. Simply because of his penalty. If he started the race in 8th place, I think Tsunoda would have enough of a track position over his rivals to then, say, nick a point or 2. But because he's starting in P11, he'll also start on the soft compound tyres that he qualified on in Q2. I just don't think he will end up finishing the points, but he will be close because the AlphaTauri is very quick, as we have seen this weekend. For Alpine, Fernando Alonso started the race in 8th, a great position for him, and I think without doubt he will finish in the points today. I don't think it will be ahead of Lance Stroll, though, like I've just said, but I think 8th or 9th is what I see for Fernando Alonso in the Grand Prix today. Esteban Ocon is down in 17th. I don't think Ocon will finish in the points, and I don't think realistically will get anywhere near because he's simply, Ocon, this weekend hasn't really had the pace. So I don't think Ocon is really going to do much of anything in this race. Hopefully he can, and hopefully for his sake, we get a safety car. Alfa Romeo, 15th and 18th. Like I've said, they don't really have the straight line speed to compete this weekend. I think they could probably climb a couple positions with their drivers, but I don't think realistically they'll be able to zoom up the grid and really seriously damage anyone in today's race. And for Williams, Nicholas Latifi 16th. Good qualifying for him. We'll see what we can do in the race. Again, very quick in a straight line the Williams is this weekend. But George Russell, P10. Of course, he qualified 11th, meaning he can start the race on whatever tyre he wants to, which is a massive advantage, I think, for him. I'm hoping he doesn't go for the soft tyre, because I think if he starts on the medium, then he has a chance of a points finish, and I think he has a chance, definitely, with that straight line speed that he does have. I don't think he will finish in the points, but I think he'll finish probably 12th or 13th like he did in France. But I think definitely Russell is in for a good race, and like I've said before, Russell is historically very good at the Red Bull Ring, so it's not really a massive surprise he's been so good. Maybe the position is a bit surprising, starting the race in 10th position, but hopefully for Williams, they can finally get their first points finish of 2021, and their first points finish since Hockenheim 2019. Guys, those are the teams, and I'll quickly read out some of your comments in the chat, just to see what you guys have to say, and then I will end the stream, because I do have to make sure that the stream doesn't go any further than an hour, because I do need time to set up the race watch along, which of course will be starting in about an hour and a half from now. And I just want to say, for everyone watching, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, because I will be live again in an hour and a half from now with Nib for the race watch along for the 2021 Styrian Grand Prix. By the way, I'm watching still the Porsche Super Cup race, and yeah, it's going to be a dry, sunny race today in Austria. So don't forget to join us for that. Bottom right of the screen, you can subscribe right there, or go to my channel page and subscribe there, and hit the notifications bell as well, like I said, so you're notified as to when I go live in an hour and a half. As well, smash the like button, share this video and channel everywhere you can. And as well, remember that after the race watch along, I will be live then again at 7 PM UK time, which is about 3 to 3.5 hours after the race finishes, for the race review, the Styrian Grand Prix. So again, don't forget to come along to that and join me for all of that. But yeah, I'll read out some final comments and then we'll get on to the end of the stream. Let me see if there's any good ones here that I haven't read out. Lando Norris has been great at this track since 2019, says Seiragara. He has. Pato B says the narrative, though, that it is that Max is outperforming the car, which I don't buy. I don't think Max this season is necessarily outperforming the car. I just think, I mean, maybe in previous seasons I think he was, but I think this season, I think he's just getting the most out of it. That is there for, say, you know, humans. Because Verstappen and Hamilton, I mean, they're not really human, are they? With how good they are. I think, yeah, Verstappen, I think, is just getting the best out of the car. Is he outperforming the car? Not really. I mean, I could see in some aspects why he could be, but not really, again. Yeah, I think Verstappen, like I said, I think he's just getting the best out of the car. Maybe not even more than's actually possible, but definitely the best out of the Red Bull. Pato B also says Red Bull car has been the standout car since testing this year. Yeah, Max is driving very well, but as things stand, currently both him and Hamilton have 3 wins each. True, that is true, and I think even though Red Bull, I think have had probably the better car overall for the season. It's still been close. I think, again, though, they have had the better car overall for the season. It's still very close between the Red Bull Mercedes car. Say a tenth or two at most. I don't think Red Bull, you know, I'm going to buy into this notion that Red Bull have a clearly much quicker car, but Verstappen just isn't getting the most out of it, and Lewis Hamilton is outperforming his car or anything. I don't believe that for a second. What I think is going on is simple. Max is getting the most out of the car, out of his car. Lewis is getting the most out of his car. But because the Red Bull, it has been, again, so far this season, just that tad better, that's why Max is ahead in the Drivers' Championship. For me, that's clear and obvious. Let's find some final comments. Maname, I think it is, says, or asks rather, will the new pit stop rules slow down Red Bull? Well, yeah. It will eliminate their advantage of quick pit stops, and it will lose them, say, a second or a couple seconds per race. The thing is, though, I mean, Mercedes, obviously, you know, we all know why Mercedes got this rule in, because they wanted to stop Red Bull's gain over them. But it's not like Mercedes now are going to gain anything over Red Bull, because now it just means that the pit stop times are going to be basically equal for everyone as long as the pit stop goes, you know, well. So, yeah, Mercedes are not really going to gain anything. And put it this way, I don't think Mercedes are behind in the Constructors' and Drivers' Championships because Red Bull have better pit stops. It's just a petty thing that they're trying to get ahead on, but it's not going to make a difference, really. But anyway, I think it's about time I end the stream. But guys, thank you for coming along to this race preview, and hopefully I'll see all of you for the race watch along again, starting in an hour and a half from now. And again, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell for that content coming up in 90 minutes, and also for the race review later at 7 PM UK time. Smash the like button, share this stream and channel everywhere you can, and as well, don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description. That is the best place for notifications for my videos and streams, and we have almost 500 people on that server, and it is pretty active, and it would be great to have you in our growing community. But guys, until my race watch along in an hour and a half, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.